22 million black victims of Americanism are waking up, and they're gaining a new political consciousness, becoming politically mature. And as they develop this political maturity, they're able to see the recent trends in these political elections. They see that the whites are so evenly divided that every time they vote, the race is so close they have to go back and count the votes all over again. And which means that any block, any minority that has a block of votes that stick together is in a strategic position. Either way you go, that's who gets it. You're in a position to determine who go to the White House and who stay in the doghouse. You're the one who has that power. You can keep Johnson in Washington, D.C., or you can send him back to his Texas cotton patch. You're the one who sent Kennedy to Washington. You're the one who put the present Democratic administration in Washington, D.C. The whites were evenly divided. It was the fact that you threw 80% of your votes behind the Democrats that put the Democrats in the White House. When you see this, you can see that the Negro vote is the key factor. And despite the fact that you are in a position to be the determining factor, what do you get out of it? The Democrats have been in Washington, D.C. only because of the Negro vote. They've been down there 4 years. And all other legislation they wanted to bring up, they brought it up and gotten it out of the way, and now they bring up you. And now they bring up you. You put them first and they put you last. Because you're a chump. A political chump. In Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, there are 257 who are Democrats. Only 177 are Republican. In the Senate, there are 67 Democrats. Only 33 are Republicans. The party that you bash controls 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate, and still they can't keep their promise to you because you're a chump. Anytime you throw your weight behind a political party that controls 2/3 of the government, and that party can't keep the promise that it made to you during election time, and you're dumb enough to walk around continuing to identify yourself with that party, you're not only a chump, but you're a traitor to your race. And what kind of alibi do they come up with? They try and pass the buck to the Dixiecrats. Now, back during the days when you were blind, deaf, and dumb, ignorant, politically immature, naturally you went along with that. But today, as your eyes come open and you develop political maturity, you're able to see and think for yourself. And you can see that a Dixiecrat is nothing but a Democrat in disguise. You look at the structure of the government that controls this country. It's controlled by 16 senatorial committees and 20 congressional committees. Of the 16 senatorial committees that run the government, 10 of them are in the hands of Southern segregationists. Of the 20 congressional committees that run the government, 12 of them are in the hands of Southern segregationists. And they're going to tell you and me that the South...
In America, there's no such thing as Democrats and Republicans anymore. That's antiquated. In America, you have liberals and conservatives. This is what the American political structure boils down to among whites. The only people who are still living in the past and thinks in terms of I'm a Democrat or I'm a Republican is the American Negro. He's the one who runs around bragging about party affiliation, and he's the one who sticks to the Democrat or sticks to the Republican. But white people in America are divided into two groups, liberals and Republicans. Or rather liberals and conservatives. And when you find white people vote in the political picture, they're not divided in terms of Democrats and Republicans. They're divided consistently as conservatives and as liberals. The Democrats who are conservatives vote with Republicans who are conservatives. Democrats who are liberals vote with Republicans who are liberals. You find this in Washington, D.C. Now, the white liberals aren't white people who are for independence, who are liberal, who are moral, who are ethical in their thinking. They are just a faction of white people who are jockeying for power, the same as the white conservatives are a faction of white people who are jockeying for power. Now, they are fighting each other for booty, for power, for prestige. And the one who is the football in the game is the Negro. 20 million black people in this country are a political football, a political pawn, an economic football, an economic pawn, a social football, a social pawn. And the liberal element of whites are those who have perfected the art of selling themselves to the Negro as a friend of the Negro, getting the sympathy of the Negro, getting the allegiance of the Negro, getting the mind of the Negro. And then the Negro sides with the white liberal, and the white liberal uses the Negro against the white conservative. So that anything that the Negro does is never for his own good, never for his own advancement, never for his own progress. He's only a pawn in the hands of the white liberal. The worst enemy the Negro has is this white man who runs around here drooling at the mouth, professing to love Negroes and calling himself a liberal. And it is following these white liberals that has perpetuated problems that Negroes in America has. If the Negro wasn't taken, trapped, tricked, deceived by the white liberal, then Negroes would get together and solve our own problem. It was the white liberals that come up with the Civil War, supposedly, they say, to solve the slave question. Lincoln was supposedly a white liberal. When you read the true history of Lincoln, he wasn't trying to free any slaves. He was trying to save the Union. He was trying to save his own party. He was trying to conserve his own power. And it was only after he found he couldn't do it without freeing the slaves that he came up with the Emancipation Proclamation. So right there you have deceit of white liberals making Negroes think that the Civil War was fought to free them. You have the deceit of white liberals making Negroes think that the Emancipation Proclamation actually freed the Negroes. And then when the Negroes got the Civil War and they found out they weren't free, the Emancipation Proclamation, they found out they still weren't free, they begin to get dissatisfied and unrest. They come up with the same white liberals came up with the 14th Amendment, supposedly to solve the problem. This came about, the problem still wasn't solved, because the white liberals, it's only a political trick. Civil War, political trick. Emancipation Proclamation, political trick. 14th Amendment to this raggedy Constitution, a political trick. Then when the Negroes begin to develop intellectually again and realize that their problem still wasn't solved and unrest began to increase, the Supreme Court, another so-called political trick, came up with what they call a Supreme Court desegregation decision. And they purposely put it in a language. Now you know, sir, that these men on the Supreme Court are masters of the King's English, masters of legal phraseology, and if they wanted a decision that no one could get around, they would have given one. But they gave their Supreme Court desegregation decision in 1954 purposely in a language, phraseology, that enabled all of the crooks in this country to find loopholes in it that would keep them from having to enforce the Supreme Court desegregation decision. So that even after the decision was handed down, our problem has still not been solved. And I only cite these things to show you that in America, the history of the white liberal has been nothing but a series of trickery designed to make Negroes think that the white liberals were going to solve our problem. And it's beginning to teach the black man that our problem will never be solved by the white man. That the only way our problem will be solved is when the black man wakes up, cleans himself up, stands on his own feet, stops begging the white man, and takes immediate steps to try and do for ourselves the things that we've been waiting for the white man to do for us. Once we do them for ourselves, once we think for ourselves, once we see for ourselves, then we'll be able to solve our own problems and we'll be recognized as human beings all over this earth.